Have you ever wondered what you should wear as a business owner? Often we are the faces of our business and we're showing up in different places, whether it's in person or whether it's just on a social media post or on our website or on Zoom calls or in Facebook Lives, whatever it is, often people are seeing us and what we wear can actually play a big role in how we're perceived. And we get to actually control the narrative like we do with branding and design. We can decide what we want people to think and assume about our business. And it's the same with our personal style. And I've got a really exciting guest for us today. And Dina is a stylist and she shares some really incredible nuggets of wisdom around how we can choose what our style is, what kind of things we want to be thinking about, and the importance of actually doing this in our business and the role and the impact that it can make. So I'm so excited to dive into today's episode. If you don't know Dina, Dina is a top Hollywood stylist with over 25 years of experience. She's known for her work on major shows like America's Got Talent, Deal or No Deal, Dr. Phil, and is featured in outlets like InStyle and the New York Times. Dina now helps entrepreneurs, speakers, and coaches to enhance their brand through style. She's got a really keen eye for detail and she crafts authentic personal styles that make lasting impressions, aligning with her clients' professional aspirations. Her mission is to ensure that every client style is as unique and impactful as their brand. So let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, Dina, to the podcast. It is so exciting to have you on.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I'm very excited for this conversation. I haven't had anyone like you on the podcast before because it's like, I really love this idea of talking. It's kind of a layer deeper on personal branding, and I'm really excited to dig into it. So before we get into it, I really would love to ask you a question I ask all of my guests, which is, what does an average day in your life and business look like? Like when you get up to when you go to bed, like what is a day for Dina look like? Or if you're like me, it's different every day, but an average.
I think I'm like you in that respect. It really is very different day to day to day. So your viewers may not know, your listeners may not know, I am in television as a stylist. I work in television as a stylist, and I also work with personal brands. People are the face of their business as a stylist. So some of the things are different, are very similar, but some of the days look different, right? So like, where am I showing up? Am I showing up at a studio on set, or am I showing up at at someone's home to do a fitting with them? But when it really comes down to like the process of my day for both worlds is very much the same. When I start working with a new client or a new show, I kind of do a whole deep dive on who they are. And, it's lots of mood boards and things, probably similar to what you do, right? Creating a visual story and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of computer work in that. Then, part of the day is putting all that stuff together, but lots of online shopping. So there's that. So the rabbit hole you can go down. So if I'm doing that for somebody else, it can be days, hours of that. But then there's also going out in store shopping, right? And seeing what's there, because it's so when you're looking for something for yourself or for somebody else, you really have to look everywhere. And luckily, because of the way the world is with all the online shopping, we have global access now, right? So I kind of do that. Then it could be, I am going to someone's brand photo shoot and I'm styling, and it's very, like nuts and boltsy, and like we've got all the photos. I mean, all the outfits put together and all of them styled, and we've had our fittings. So that could be a day. Fitting days are another day where I meet with people. There's racks of clothes, and we put together looks and outfits, and I have a tailor, and we figure out what works best on them and all the things. So really every single day is so very different, but there's certain things that just repeat. It just matters, what am I working on and what's that day going to look like,
Yeah, amazing. Sounds very interesting. Yeah,
fun.
I love it. Yeah, it'd be so fun. You've got such a dynamic range of things that you can do as well. I feel like it wouldn't get boring. It's very quickly.
Yeah, no, it doesn't give, and that's the one thing I love. Not only because the day has variety, the people I work with have variety, the places I go have variety. It's funny because I've been doing this for so long. I think like, could I ever have a desk job? Could I ever have a place where it was just like one thing? I don't think I could.
No, no, I can understand that. And so like you've gone from like your career in TV and styling and all that kind of area, and now a lot to helping business owners in their style and their personal brand and all that. How did you make that shift in your life and your business?
So one of the things, it became very obvious to me when I started working with people personal styling, and really, where did I want to niche down to, and who did I want to work with? And it really did stem from my work in television. So I always talk about, in a lot of my things, is telling your story with style, right? Just as you would tell a story with a font or a color or something like that. And I always talk about doing that. And that really does stem from when I'm on a show. I've done lots of reality shows, a lot of game shows, things like that. And the first thing that happens is when I get people that are going to be on the show, whether it's contestants or guests of other people, is what's their story. So if it's a contestant on a show, on a game show or something, they'll be like, oh, this is a mom from, Montana, and she's got this, and she's a teacher, and da da da. Well, she's going to look very different from the woman who is a corporate attorney, and she is here for, whatever reason. So that's what I mean when I talk about telling a story with style. And so that's why it was a natural progression for me to come into this and start working with entrepreneurs and people who are the face of their business, because it's what I've done this whole time. I'm always telling people story with style. So it really was natural.
Yeah, that's so true. And I didn't realize this. Like, do the people that go on these game shows, do they not just come in their normal clothes that they like? Does someone style them?
So people style them.
That's so wild.
I know, it's so funny. So a lot of people that come there think, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was happening. But whenever I have that conversation, people think, and look, before I got in this business, I didn't know it either, right? I didn't even think about anybody dressing themselves. I thought you show up, you do your job, you go home like everybody else in the world. It's not that way in television. So what happens is we usually give them guidelines, much as if I was giving somebody a brand shoot, guidelines, for what they should wear and what they should avoid, things like that. But the truth of it is most people show up and they don't have what we consider like camera ready, right? You're going on national television. It should be at a certain level. Certain colors don't work, or certain things, the fit could be off. So they show up and they bring things with the intention of wearing them. But once they get in there, I kind of have to do an assessment real fast and go like, okay, maybe we can use this, or nothing's going to work. Or, generally speaking, I'm touching something on everyone that comes through.
Yeah, that's wild. Cool. Good to know. I'll remember that next time I'm watching a TV show. Okay. Back to business. So why is our personal style so important as business owners and entrepreneurs? Like, what is the connection point? Why is it something we should actually think about?
Well, I would say the first and foremost thing is that real first impression, right? Like when you are the face of your brand, it's you. You're not just the face of it. People are connecting with you. And one of the things when people see you, and when I say this, some people go, ugh, but people are judging you. And they may not be thinkingly judging you, but they are going off of past memories of people who maybe had clothes like you or look like you, or anybody's preconceived notions. So if you're not thinking about what you're wearing when you're showing up, you could be sending off the wrong message, right? You can be showing up and say, if you want to show up real professionally and you're looking a little bit too casual, people might not take you seriously. If you show up a little bit too conservative, but you're like a really fun brand or a really fun person and your personality, then they're going to get, a wrong mistake there. And what happens is when people meet us and they see us, this impression is formed in their head. And immediately they are looking for, like we as human beings are looking for reasons to be right about what our thoughts are. So they're not looking for reasons to be like, oh, they look like that, but they say they're that. No, they're looking for reasons to say she looks like that, so she must be like that, right? So it's that first impression that we have to, if you make the right first impression, that can really help elevate you, because it just knocks down a barrier. People immediately get you, they understand, and they're like, okay, great. But if they don't get you, and then, through conversation and through working with them, they start to understand, that's great. They can eventually get there. But if they're not going to give you the time of day to start, then you're working at that deficit, right? Or if they decide to work with you, you have to get them up to a base level 0 and then say, like, here's who I am and here's what I do. So I really think it's that missed opportunity of, making the impression and really using your clothing as a way to say, like, here I am, this is what I'm all about.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you put some of those things in it. Obviously, it's quite similar with our visual branding of our logos and our branding. And so I love that. Yeah, like if you look, like, people can definitely form a different opinion about you if you they get to know you, but if they're not giving you that time, then I love that idea that let's just help them to kind of understand us properly at a glance, so that we can then got that relationship a lot faster, and people can look at us and be like, okay, they're for me or they're not for me, and they get that a lot quicker if we're styled in the way that's accurate. Hey.
That's exactly right. And it's especially when you're, a lot of people in online marketing and things, online businesses, the moment that they have is that moment of the scroll, right? Like lots of people are finding us on social, whether it's, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever it is. And if they see you and you don't look like they vibe with you, they're going to go right past.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is that's actually okay as well, because you don't want to attract every single person out there, right? You don't want to be somebody for everybody. You want to be somebody for your person, right? Like my person is different than someone else, another stylist person, right? And I think certain clients, I'm like, that is so not my jam. I so don't want to work with those kind of people. And the same thing goes for me, right? So we want to put out what we want to attract in that way. Same thing, like again, with the branding, with the colors, with the fonts, with that real energy of what it is we're wearing and what we're showing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we need to be brave almost sometimes to lean into our personal styles and be okay that not everyone's going to gel with that. And that's a good thing, because you're not like my services and the way that I work with people isn't going to gel with everyone. So why would I make sure that I attract everyone if that's not going to suit? So like even with my branding, like people come to me if they want a really fun brand. I have a lot less minimal people coming to me, even though I can help with that, because they see a fun brand. They're like, oh, wow, she must be good at that kind of thing. So yeah, it's interesting.
That is exactly the same thing. And the way I look at this is when I look at a brand is it's just one more arm, right? It's something people don't, they think about color, they think about energy, they think about font, they think about layout. This is just another visual component that's a really big component, because you're in your brand, you're in your stuff, right? Like I love how you always have your purple on, like it's part of who you are. It's part of that fun. It's part of all the things. And so people immediately get, oh, she's fun, she's on point, she's on brand. And so I think that really reads and registers with people.
Exactly. Okay. So do you have, before we get into some tips around how we can think about this for our own businesses, do you have any examples of someone that you might have worked with in the past that you've kind of like been able to just really help them to find their style and how that's then looked for them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was kind of trying to think of a few people like this, because I think what happens is sometimes it's as easy as a small tweak, and sometimes it's as big as like a huge tweak, right? So I have one woman that I was working with, and she's in real estate, and she was like, I need to up my game. I need to change my look. I need to change my, all my things. And when I went through with her and kind of looked at her images, and I looked at her closet, and I looked at all the things she had, the truth of the matter was for her is that there was like no punch to it. It was really that she was only really lacking like accessories, like the right shoes, the right jewelry, the right bag, like certain things. And it was just like she was all put together. So part of me was like, you don't really need a whole shift, but you need just those little tweaks. So people shouldn't think that they, just because they haven't like worked with a stylist or really thought with it, some people's style naturally aligns with what they're doing and who they are. So that's a good thing. On the other end of the scope is, I've worked with somebody who had been in finance and had then shifted into kind of the art world, and then was going back many years later back into this world of finance. And so when she had been in this world of finance years ago, it was all about like power suits and certain things, and, looking like the man and looking like these things, right? And then she went into this creative world, and it was, anything went at that point, right? She could wear whatever she wants. She could do whatever she wants. So now when she was stepping back into this man's world again, she didn't know how to bridge that. And what do you do? She wanted to show up powerfully, but she didn't want to look like a man. She didn't want to be in only suits. She didn't want to do those things. And so we did things with the shapes that she wore. She wore like these great trousers, but with like a fitted knit top with like bold color. We did things with her accessories and her jewelry. We did things with her shoes. We did jackets, but they were like a more feminine cut jacket. So it really is, when she stepped into that, she felt like herself, but she felt like the new version of herself, So I think it's really about finding out who you want to show up as and how you want to show up. And like both of those people, you know, come back later and like, oh my gosh, I feel, because the truth of it is, you show up differently when you feel different about yourself. And that's really what it boils down to. They both showed up all of a sudden feeling more energized, feeling more right about who they were, feeling like, I feel like the best version of me, you know? And I feel like sometimes that sounds very cliche, the best version of me. But the truth is that that's the truth, right? That's how we want to show up. We want to show up as that, whatever that thing inside us is that's trying to get out, that we're all, you know, on social and doing all these things. That's what we want to show up as. And so that's what we want to tap into.
I just wanted to interrupt for a moment to say that if you're enjoying this episode, I would love to invite you to my free 3-part video training to help you to create your own stunning visual brand, helping you to grow your business faster and to feel and look $1 million. If you're ready for the best year of business yet, then join over 1,000 business owners who have already taken part in the challenge to get started on creating your own brand. Join us today at whitedeer.com.au/challenge. That's the color white, the animal deer.com.au/challenge. Cannot wait to see you there. Let's get back to the episode. And so if we want to show up as us and kind of be really authentic in that, how do we find that? Like if we're feeling really clueless around what our style is or how we want to show up or how we want to be perceived, what are some first steps that we need to be taking or some questions we need to think about?
So for me, I always, and you know, what I tell people to do for themselves is what I do with people when I work with them is, it really does come down to like starting with intention and thinking about these words of how you want to show up and how you want to feel, but also how you want to be perceived. You know, do I want to be perceived as fun? Do I want to be perceived as energy? Do I want to be perceived as someone who is an authority in their field, you know? And with that, do I want to come across as approachable, or do I want to come across as like a luxury brand, or do I want to come across as, you know, anything else, eclectic? And so it really starts with getting intentional about what you want that to look like. And then the next step for that is, you know, finding those words. What does that actually mean to you when it comes to clothes, right? So, you know, what I do, and I suggest people do, is like go on Pinterest or go online and start putting in words that you think resonate with that, right? You know, women dressed, you know, in a fun business way or something like that. Like it's all about the search and the words that you use. But it really starts there. I don't suggest people just go out and start shopping. You know, you really have to start with getting intentional. What are those words? How do you want to be perceived? What does that mean to me in terms of clothes that say that? And then I always say, like, go to your closet, right? Start looking. Once you find these images of things that you think look like the person that you want to be, go to your closet. Can I recreate any of that? Do I have things already that feel like these words that I'm talking about? You know, you probably do. If it's something that you aspire to, you probably have stuff in there. It's more of a weeding out process, right? What's not that, and getting rid of that, and then leaning more into the things that speak to those words and that image and that persona, and then leaning more into that and fleshing things out that way.
That's such a good point. And yeah, I love the idea of starting out with working out what we want it to be and then finding that inspiration before we kind of, just jump online and start shopping or
because I think people get confused because they think I need to change my style. I'm going to go shop. And that's like the last thing you want to do, because that's just going to create more confusion for yourself if you have no direction. You know, once you figure that out, what that needs to look like, what I always say to people is like, break down the pieces of what that looks like. Is it that I need more great jeans, or is it that I need more blazers, or is it that like that look is just like fun blouses? Like, what are those pieces? And then when you go to shop, it's like having a grocery list. It's like, okay, the look that I want to be has these components in it. Is it jewelry, right? I don't have any jewelry. Like, go find those components. And now when you bring it all together, it's going to be much easier to put together the ultimate look that you want to end up with.
Yeah, that's so true. And so you mentioned to look onto Pinterest and get some and like search some different words. What are some other phrases that people might want to type in? Because I feel like I would have no clue. Like, I know all of the phrases to search for design inspiration, but I don't know the phrases to search for fashion inspiration. So what are some other phrases we might want to use?
So some of it leans into, lots of people want to do, it can be an aesthetic thing, like, you know, uh, boho chic, or, business, business casual attire for women. It can be, edgy, business with an edge. It can be as simple as casual street looks. So kind of like look at things or look at people that you follow, and kind of think about what they look like. But it can also be as nuts and boltsy as blazer, jeans, outfits,
Yeah.
outfits with a lot of accessories, um, outfits that, incorporate a motorcycle jacket. Like it can be very specific, but
Yeah.
it can also be broad. And I always recommend that you do it both ways, because you're going to come up with different things. And then once you start kind of like saving those things, I also recommend going back into Pinterest, and it will start to show you more of those similar things that you're clicking on and saving, because it has its own algorithm. And then you'll start to see more. And the more you dive down that rabbit hole, the better the images that are shown to you. And they're going to be more in that category.
Yeah, cool. Those are some really great search terms. I need to remember those, 'cause I feel
Yeah.
like I know I'm purple, but then beyond that, it's like, which kind of direction do we want to go? And I think
Oh,
I
and that's
way
good.
quite
What it could
wide.
be too, is like it's purple, approachable. I mean, you could even put Zoom tops. You know what I mean? Like things that look
I like
great
that.
on that. Like it literally can be that way. And the more words you put in there, the more focused that search is going to come up.
Yeah. So find I've got a few good pairs of purple pants, but I rarely need them because no one ever sees the bottom half of my body. It's like, oh, I've got some really cute checkered purple pants, and I don't think I've ever worn them for
You're gonna
anything.
have to like kick your leg up one of these shows.
I know, I know.
Like, I
So,
can show you my pants.
just for a moment, just humor me here. I just need to show them off to somebody. Actually,
Exactly.
on that, what are some things we should consider around, like, is there anything we should consider around the different, like, ways that we're showing up in a business? So say, for example, if we're a keynote speaker versus if we are just doing Zoom presentations versus if we're doing a branding photo shoot, like, are there any differences in those situations we should think about?
I think there are. I think when you go to different scenarios, I always tell people think about when you're formulating what your style is, how are you going to level it up and how are you going to level it down, right? So it's like you want to show up everywhere looking like you and the same person, only dressed at a different level. So I always recommend, showing up on Zoom. I don't care who you're showing up with, put something on, like brush your hair, put something on. It drives me nuts that people get on these business calls. And sometimes, even if I'm hiring someone, look, I'm judging them at that point, right? They're not, I mean, maybe they're judging me, right? I still show up because it says to you, I expect this level, right? I show up this way. I expect a certain level. So I think that there's something to be said for that. So like in a Zoom setting, and it depends on who you're meeting. Is it a podcast like this? Is it something that's going to be broadcast? You probably want to be like the little bit more elevated version of yourself, right? If it's just a Zoom meeting with your team or something, they can be a little bit more casual. But, I literally saw a post that Layla Hormozi, do you know who Layla Hormozi is?
Oh, yes.
Hormozi. So she literally did a thing today, and I reposted it talking about she was bummed out because she says, I'm showing up on my calls with my team, and everybody's like they look like they're in their pajamas, sweats, and like, uncapped and looking bad. And she's like, I don't want my team to look like this. And she says, and then I had to take a look at myself and think, oh, that's how I'm showing up every day. And she said, and I didn't say anything to them. She says, but all of a sudden I started to change. Like I started to do my makeup, and, rather than not do my hair and pull it back, I started to do my hair. And she said, and slowly but surely, like within, a month's time, everybody else raised the level of that. But same thing, like you were saying, is it different, different arenas. When you're going on a stage to speak, that's when you're at your ultimate, like, what do you want your brand to say? Like, what do you want people to look at you and think, oh, I want to work with that person? And that should really be the dressiest, most elevated version of that. And then your brand shoot also, I think your brand shoot should incorporate a little bit of both ends of the spectrum, if that's who you are as a brand. I always say I am not an absolutist on anything, because I think that everybody's an individual. And I think that, when it comes to, I always say, tell your story with style. Not everybody you shouldn't be a cookie cutter. You shouldn't just be like, oh, this niche looks like that, so I'm going to do that. You should always bring in yourself. But like when it comes to your brand shoot, you're going to use those images on your social. You're going to use them on your website. You're going to use them on your headshot. You're going to send them to podcasts. So you want to have versions of the dressier version and the less dressy version, and so that you have all those images captured. And the one thing I would say is that I think there needs to be consistency throughout when you're doing all these things. So like for me, you're always going to see me with some sort of jewelry, right? For you, it's your purple, right? For other people, it could be something else. So that's where it's like learning to dial that up and down, and then just have those outfits. And I always think too, I tell people sometimes, if you're going to have one first meeting and you don't, you're starting out, you don't have a lot of money to put into like, your clothes or your this or your that, have one baller, like great outfit that you only use for first client meetings. And that's like, put that over there, right? Like I always tell people like, oh, that's genius. I'm like, you only meet people once, like for the first time once, right? So if you know that you always use that outfit, put that over there. It's just like, I know when, so first of all, it's like frees up the space of what am I going to wear on this call or in this meeting or whatever. It looks great. And then it's like ready. You just put it away. I'm only wearing that for that. I feel like that's like an easy one for people to kind of go, oh, that's good.
Yeah. That, and it makes it a bit less scary of like, oh, I need this. You don't need to start out with a whole wardrobe. You can just start out with one or two pieces that like, and like, say for me, like if I'm showing up on my Instagram stories or that I'm taking a photo for my business or something, you don't need like 50 outfits. I've got like 3 jumpers that I rotate between and we're all good, It doesn't need to be a whole really complicated thing, especially at that beginning stage as well.
That's exactly right.
I love having that first client outfit and making that really great first impression. And then you're all good.
Yeah. I mean, and the truth of it is you can have a first one, a second one, a closing outfit. Like these are my 5 outfits for my client. If you work with peak clients only in Zoom, or even if you work with them in person, but you're generally like, this is what the arc of me working with somebody looks like, have the arc of outfits, and then you're done. Get it right once, and don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, that's so true.
People get nervous about it. And that's what I try to help people to just figure out ways around it, and how do I manage this other thing on top of everything else I'm trying to juggle.
Yeah. And so nervous is and getting a bit stressed about all the different outfits I need to put together is one thing. Do you find there's any other common problems or fears or challenges people face when they're doing this kind of work for their business?
I think getting it right, quote unquote, is something that people worry about a lot. And I understand that. But for me, part of getting it right is going back to that understanding who you are, right? So you want to understand who you are, not only in terms of how you want to show up and how you want to be perceived, but you want to know who you are and what works on your body, right? What makes me look most flattering? And I use the term flattering loosely because flattering for some is not flattering for others, right? But you want to kind of broad scope makes, things that look flattering on you. One of the other hiccups, I think, is when people are starting out and trying to figure out their style, they try to copy and paste what everybody else in their industry, like they look around like, oh my God, this person does that person does that, maybe I'll just wear what they wear. Mm-hmm. And then they try to put it on and they get discouraged because it doesn't work the same, because either their coloring is different, or their personality and their energy is different, or their shape is different, and they're trying to buy the same things and it's not going to work. So going down those rabbit holes is really another kind of way that people get themselves more confused than less confused. I do think when people are looking to, how do I figure it out, or how do I follow somebody, there's so many influencers out there right now that are, style influencers, and they're really influencers. Their whole thing is to sell product. They're not stylists. A stylist, my job is to figure out what's good on you, right? So I want people to think like a stylist, not like following an influencer and being like, oh, I'm the trendy thing and I would do what she does. Mm-hmm. That works for her because that's what she does, right? but really to figure out who you are and just keep it in that lane. And when you get like shiny object syndrome, just like bring it back, pull out your words, pull out your images, pull out your things and do that.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. And so almost maybe even putting together like for me as a visual person, this will be useful, of like a mood board of like some of those pictures that I found on Pinterest that are relevant, and some of those words that I want to I guess exude in my business, and having that there as a reminder, so that especially if you're someone who's prone to online shopping a little bit too much, just bringing it back and being like, oh, actually that's not super relevant to what I don't really need that one right now, but maybe this one over here I can invest in.
That's exactly right. And if people aren't using Pinterest or something, even snapping things, screenshotting on your phone and saving them in a folder or something like that. But you're right. Once you start to see, you have to start with that intentional business of it. And then that is what I do with everybody. I make a mood board, whether it's a show or it's, an individual. And because when you're pulling things, and I always tell people to when you start looking, don't edit yourself or judge yourself with what you're pulling and what you're finding. Pull what you're drawn to, right? And then put it in a spot. And then you edit it down, right? Then you edit it down and you break down like, okay, it looks like I'm drawn to a lot of black and white. Okay, so let me put, this is a thing. Or it looks like I'm drawn to lots of different colors. Okay, so how can I incorporate that into my look? Or it looks like I'm into way more dresses than I thought I was, so maybe that's a place that you go. So making that mood board and having that as a guide. And I always tell people when I use it, because I'll style them and, we'll do a shoot or we'll do like a season. And I would say, if you're going to start going and buying other things, use this as a reference point so that you don't go off brand, right? Now, it's not to say that you can't experiment, because I do think, we evolve, our closets have to evolve, right? And we all grow. But you want to still say, like, am I still showing up the way I want to be seen? And always take that into consideration.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's been some really great, just I guess tidbits of information in there to remind us of how we want to show up, and I guess making that the forefront of our mind when we're thinking about this stuff, and then making decisions out of that to be, I guess, a lot less overwhelming, and making sure that when we do show up, like you said at the start of that, when a client is first seeing us, or when someone is first finding our Instagram, or they're first seeing us on a scroll, that we're making the impression that we want to make. I guess we can be, I guess, in control of that narrative a bit more. We don't have to just be like, oh, I'm just going to show up and people can decide what they want to decide about me, but being able to really that narrative a bit more.
Yes, and it's just like, again, we go back to what it's like slapping up any old colors or slapping up any old fonts or slapping up any old anything. It's like you have to be intentional. If you're building a business, the idea is if you're building a business, you want business, right? So you have to be intentional about every step of that. And this, your style is definitely a visual component to that.
It's a huge one. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that incredible knowledge. If we want to get in touch with you or work with you or be in your world, how can we connect with you?
So you can follow me on Instagram, DMC Styles. And on there, I give lots of like tips and things like that. I also have a website. It's going on to construction right now, but we'll see, it's dmcstyles.com. Those are probably the two of the best ways. And if there is anybody who's doing a brand shoot or something, I have a downloadable guide that'll kind of help you with how do I know what to choose? What do I wear? Things like that, because I do feel like that's such a thing for people, and it's overwhelming, and it's just really like, what do I need to think about, things like that. So I think that people find that really helpful.
Perfect. We'll have all those links in the show notes if anyone wants to engage in that. Thank you so much for joining us, Dina. I have loved our discussion, and I hope to see you around.
Thank you so much. I had a really great time, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
So thank you for joining us for today's episode. I hope you found that as useful and as fun and as helpful as I did. I hope you go forth and maybe jump onto Pinterest, maybe work out what you want your brand to represent and what style you want people to associate you with, and have fun exploring that, and see if you've already got some pieces that you can use in your wardrobe to help you complete that look. So if you like this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you give it a like or whatever you kind of need to do on the platform that you're listening or watching, and I'll see you next week for another episode. Bye.